Hi, I'm Maddie Sloane and welcome to Snap Happy, the photography show. Today we chat with some great guests and Peter Eastway brings us some fresh post-production tips. But first, we're headed to the Kimberley to explore and photograph one of Australia's most iconic landscapes.
We're off on a great Aussie adventure up into the Kimberley.
Very different from the rest of Australia. It's big landscape, big sky country, corrugated roads.
Rocky terrain, red cliffs, big gorge country. You know, that's something you don't get anywhere else, so it's pretty spectacular.
We've arrived in our Questro. What an iconic location in the Kimberley. We're going to explore it from the land, air and water. It's a beautiful part of Australia. I love it. I've been here many times. Let's go and have some fun. Just landed back from a cruise on the beautiful Chamberlain River in the Kimberley.
We had the light there, so the red cliffs were just amazing. I don't think I've seen that anywhere, that redness, and then you've got the contrasting, the trees that grow out of nowhere, so they're, hanging on by leaf and limb.
There were a couple of crocodiles, there were some rock wallabies. At the end, the most amazing spitting fish that managed to get water all over your lenses.
So one of the tools in my pocket was a Nokia phone. One thing I used my Nokia for was video work. It's got a cinema mode. It's 4K, high quality, and on a big screen looks fantastic. So I used that to photograph the fish and to do some of the story of the group doing things in the boat itself. Get your smartphone out, give it a go. It really comes up great. We've just entered Emma Gorge, and what I like to do on these walks is look for different subjects to photograph. Now we've got a pandanus here, and I'm going to try a couple of different apertures. I'm going to shoot wide open at f4, and I'm going to close down to f11. Try different things. That's what photography is all about.
It's a longer walk in than you think. Rocky, but that's the nature of this country.
There was certainly a lot of clambering over rocks, but the swimming hole at the end was just beautiful.
Emma Gorge is one of those really pretty oasis locations in the Kimberley. Photographically, it's a bit of a challenge. You've got bright highlights, dark shadows. I've kept it simple. I've just used my standard GP lens initially, shooting different animals in particular as I came through. But at the end, I used my super wide angle for the waterfall and the amphitheatre area itself. Keep it simple, get some great results.
I think crossing the Pentecost River, one of those iconic shots.
It was like almost like a cowboy movie set.
You know, anyone that's ever looked at a book on the Kimberley has seen that photo. Really iconic location.
If you're going to do the Gibb River Road, you have to do the Pentecost River crossing. It's a cool place to get across. Four-wheel drive is needed, and look at this, spectacular at the moment. We're in that last light of the day with the mountains as a backdrop. I had our vehicles come back and forth 2-3 times, and photographers were set up with the mountains as a backdrop, and we drove through the Pentecost River, and the idea was to have your camera on aperture priority, f8, a shutter speed around 1,000th of a second, and continuous focusing, this allowing you to track the vehicle as it's coming toward you. So a lens that'd be pretty good is a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. You can start 100 mil, you get the ranges, the water and everything, and at some time you could zoom in and get a tight shot too with the water flaying off from the vehicle. This for me is one of the great life experiences. Come here, the only thing missing is a beer. This morning, some of the group took a helicopter ride with Heli Spirit. What a fantastic way to see the Kimberley.
We've definitely done a few photography flights, particularly out amongst the Coburn Ranges.
Heli Spirit takes off from the heart of El Questro, and this gives you a great chance to explore the region.
It's just so amazing, such a vast landscape to see. All the mountains, all the colours around here, little tropical paradises that you can find everywhere, something new around every corner.
Again, simple techniques, aperture priority, 5.6, 400 ISO. I was getting around 1,000th to just over 1,000th of a second shutter speed. That's perfect. I'm going to get really nice sharp results. My GP lens, 24 to 105, will enable me for wider through to getting a bit of a telephoto effect, but don't forget, most of us have a large megapixel capability. If I crop 50%, I still have 25 megapixels to play with. That's heaps. So I don't need a long lens. It's very difficult to use a long lens in a helicopter. GP lenses do a great job. Give it a go, you'll love it. Literally last light, pulled up to shoot sunset. It's a beautiful Kimberley sunset. I love to add something in it. So I've got the kapok tree here, the flower, beautiful flower. I've used my camera set it to program, so it sets shutter and aperture automatically, automatic TTL flash, point shoot, take the photograph. It's an easy way to shoot and get a really stunning result at sunset.
In the next episode, Darran finds himself within a magnificent bird haven at the remote Ellen Bray station. Here are some images that you may recognise. This series of monochromatic family portraits were taken during quarantine and have been shared on social media over 75,000 times. The artist behind these images is Rowena Meadows, a documentary photographer based in Melbourne, and she joins us now. Hi Rowena, tell me, what inspired these images?
When I first started hearing about the lockdown and how long we were looking at being in quarantine, I started thinking about how people were going to manage their physical and emotional boundaries when they're spending so much time with people in their family. And I started to hear the word enmeshed. I think it's something I might have learned at university about families where their individual identities kind of blur and end up becoming like each other. And I thought, how can I express that in a photo? So I thought about how we could all look the same in a photo, and obviously choosing a colour and dressing in that one colour seemed like a way to start. So yeah, I only intended to do just one. My family actually cooperated really well with me, which they don't usually do when I want to photograph them. So that was just something in the act of seeking out all those colourful items that was sort of bonding, and there wasn't too much conflict for the first one. So I thought maybe we could do some more.
The response was huge. They were even published in the Good Weekend magazine. How did that feel?
Surreal and great. I still am shocked how the photos were received. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm just grateful for the attention that it's brought to my other work. So it's been great.
That's incredible. You actually started your career in psychology. How has that helped shape you as a documentary photographer?
I consider my psychology training to be my whole training for being a documentary photographer. Both careers are really about making sense of what it means to be human, and both require an unbridled curiosity in human behaviour. So I think with being a psychologist, I would listen to people's stories and perhaps reflect them back to them with my words. When I spend a day with a person or a family, I am experiencing their life and living with them for a day, and I reflect back what I see with my pictures. Seeing your life reflected back to you in a book can be incredibly validating, and in some cases, if it's done very sensitively, therapeutic.
Tell me about your day in the life series.
Yes, so I spend around 10 hours with a family or a person, and I just exist in their world for the day. I encourage them to keep it as ordinary as possible. I go to soccer practice, the supermarket, public toilets, like wherever they go, I go. And the idea is just to make an honest as possible reflection of an ordinary day. The photos end up in a book, and a book is the most important part of the process. It's not a choice.
Most people these days tend to share their images on social media, so why do you produce books?
A lot of times when people hire a photographer, the photos just sit on a hard drive. They never get printed. Maybe they print 2 or 3 that go on a wall or on social media. But there's something about the tangible act of having a book. A lot of my families, it's a ritual where they will all sit down and pick up the book and look through it. And particularly if I revisit them once a year or once every couple of years, they'll end up with a tangible family history that they can pass on for generations.
Yeah, incredible.
All my clients end up with a book. The book is the best way for me to control the narrative. It's a very intentional process, the selecting of photos and the sequencing. I need to make sure I have visual variety. I need to make sure I have a balanced representation of the people in the photographs, their relationships. I'm really passionate about the book.
You print your books through Memento. Why is that?
I love Memento. I've been printing with them for I think 6 years. They are obsessed with the craftsmanship, and I am so impressed with the way they handle my colours. Honestly, it just feels like a collaboration working with Memento. I call them up with the dumbest questions all the time, and it always feels like we're working on something together, and I love that.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this interesting interview in COVID-19, but I've enjoyed every second.
Thank you, Maddie. I love talking to you.
If you would like to check out more of Rowena's work, head over to rowenameadows.com.au. And to start your own photo book today, check out Memento on the link below.
Hi there, I'm Peter Eastway and we're down here on the New South Wales South Coast, and my job for this season of Snap Happy is to show you my approach to photography, which is capture followed by post-production. You can't do one without the other, and the other, the post-production, is for me an awful lot of fun. Camel Rock is a pretty popular spot, and every time you come there's a different amount of sand in the foreground, and so you get a completely different shot. Well, not completely different, the rocks are still the same. We got here very early this morning. It's a weekday, so not too busy. Sometimes you can find a dozen or so photographers here, so make sure you get early to mark a spot. What I'm capturing here are pixels. So I've got the scene set up and I've got all this wave motion happening, and sometimes the photos of the waves in the background aren't as good as they are in the foreground and vice versa. So what I'm doing is I'm capturing a series of photographs, and then later on in post-production I can stack them all together and just rub in or paint in the bits of the photo that I like the best. It's important to keep the camera locked off on a tripod so nothing moves, and all that's happening is that the action like this is happening in the background, and that'll give me the option later on. I'm also hoping, but just hoping, that maybe the sun's going to break through that cloud over there, which is going to paint the top of those rocks. Unfortunately this morning, I'm looking at this and thinking maybe, maybe not, but you never know if you never go. The only problem with this technique of capturing pixels is that once you've locked the camera off on a tripod, there's not much else you can do. So I'm sitting here waiting for the light, and looking at the time, it's not looking great, but that's the problem. Once you've got the camera there, it's set, it's locked off, you can't go and take other photos. That's a good reason for having a drone or a second camera. In the interest of good technique, I probably should be using a remote here on the camera, but the camera is locked off on a rather sturdy tripod, and so I'm pressing the shutter very gently so as not to disturb the camera during the exposure. However, a remote control or one of your little wireless apps, the Fuji has a great little wireless app, I could be sitting here pressing the button, but I'm old school. It's actually a really nice sky this morning. We've got the cloud coming down and sort of mirroring the peak of Camel Rock, and a little bit of blue sky off to the side. So in terms of post-production, it's a nice sky to work with, and I think there's quite a bit of potential. We haven't had the sunrise this morning, so we're going to have to go to plan B. When you don't get nature cooperating completely, post-production can be a great help. I said earlier this morning that photography is all about capture followed by post-production, but for me there's a third stage, and it's the print. For me, that's what photography is all about, creating that print, putting it up on the wall, and I just love the print. But to get there, you need to have good post-production. And if you want to see the steps that I'm going to show in great detail, go to the Snap Happy website where I go through it step by step. But to give you a quick overview, let's have a look at what we've got. This is the image where we've got the foreground, the rocks, the sky, the water, everything is working together. And that's because I've taken 4 photographs. Let's look at those 4 images. We've got here the first image where I've got some nice water in the middle ground there, but everything else is a little bit dark and not quite right. This one, the foreground, looks great. I like the foreground, but the background's a little bit light. Here, the sky, that's what I like. I really like the sky in this third one. And then the fourth one, that's when the light came out. We were hoping for a little bit of sunshine, but even though it's not direct sunshine, there's a lot more detail in the rock, and that's really beautiful. So what I've done is I've put those 4 images together, and you can see over here in the layers stack that I've got those 4 layers. So let's just turn all of the layers off. I've added in my first image, and then what I've done is I've added in the foreground. The transition is a little bit messy there, but that doesn't matter because the third layer that I add in, that puts all that beautiful milky water, which I like, over the middle. And because the camera has been locked off on a tripod, it's very, very easy to do. There's no readjustments done, it's there. The only thing missing is actually Camel Rock itself, and that's why we've got the 4th shot where we just add in a little bit of light, just to add into the image overall, so that when we look at the picture, there's detail throughout, and that's what makes me happy, and that's what makes a great print. In fact, making me happy, I should be Snap Happy.
My whole life revolves around the sea. It's work, it's pleasure through surfing and photography, and it's a community I love. I'm getting out of the surf photography, moving into just capturing people's stories. This project's about documenting people's life that revolves around the sea from all walks of life, such as surfers, fishermen, artists, marine biologists. And the aim is to bring more social and environmental change in areas such as conservation. More so for inspiration for me, because the images, they might make change in the end, and that's something I really want to do instead of just shooting advertising. So I've got the GFX 100 and now I've got the 100S, and it's just for my type of work, especially working around people and documenting people's stories. It's good to be able to take in the 100S for size-wise, because you just want those people to keep doing what they're doing and not freaking out about size. So the smaller camera, and I've had a few injuries lately, so it's nice just carrying around a small body camera. Well, large format in something so small is quite incredible. The GFX is important to my work, really just to be able to get real life size images on the wall, because that's something that's missing, especially with the work around the water. You just can't print to scale, but with the GFX you can just go massive. Ocean-grown abalone is important because they basically have a farm out in the sea for abalone, which they've developed all on their own. It's not like they're taking everything from the sea. They're putting back and then taking and then putting back again. And they've put 10,000 concrete bollards for abalone to grow off, and they grow their abalone from a small size, and then obviously they harvest them later on when they're dinner plate sizes, and they can just keep doing that for years. That's important to the sea because it's an environmentally friendly operation. Abalone is one of those resources that can certainly be wiped out with overfishing. The weather sealing is super important on the GFX, especially with my work. I'm always around the ocean. Ocean spray, you're on boats, you're on jet skis, and I like to shoot out of a housing sometimes, and it just gives you that extra bit of confidence knowing that your camera can take a little bit of a splash, which I've done once or twice. The IBIS on the GFX is amazing, and I'm going out on the ocean. You can't take a tripod out in a boat or a jet ski to do this slow shutter, so it's allowed me to be able to, before the sun comes up, go and shoot super early and speed blurs, and it's still pin sharp. It's kind of amazing how stable the camera is. The GFX autofocus is amazing. Being on a jet ski out in the surf, shooting high-speed sports such as surfing is incredible. File size is important for maybe 30% of my work, especially that clients are printing big, and especially when I'm trying to print big as well. A lot of my work revolves around social network and websites, but when you want to print big, the GFX is next level. I chose Shannon for Life Around the Sea portraits because he's just got a really interesting story, especially coming from his background and his experiences with great white sharks. He's got some really crazy stories. And Shannon has recently developed a brand called Shark Eyes, which is a non-destructive shark deterrent, which is basically a pair of eyes watching the predator. And it's just really good to hear him speak about sharks, and especially about keeping your eyes on it, on the predator, and obviously that helps. Yeah, I've been taken from the sea for years, through enjoyment, surfing, and in particular, my work revolves around the ocean, being a photographer, surf photographer, so being able to give back, shooting people's stories and then letting other people know how to give back to the sea it feels good. Yeah, the new type of work is it's more of a personal work for me, my personal growth, being, learning, being inspired by people's stories and what they do, and being able to give back as well through my photography.
Thanks for joining us on Snap Happy. If you'd like to join our community, head on over to snaphappytv.com. There you'll find full episodes from the archives, exclusive content, and of course, special offers from our partners. See you next time on Snap Happy, the photography show.